Hello, and welcome to another woman's story. Tonight, we're going to have a special guest. But before we do that, I wanted to just give you some feedback with regard to what our organization is. My name is Cheryl Patton Dandridge, and I'm the founder of Another Woman's Story. And our platform is designed to assist women that have been victims of domestic violence, to offer a platform that they can share their stories, that they can share their experiences, that they can glean from the success of other women who have been through the exact same thing and design their lives to be something that is way more positive than what they've experienced. Tonight, I have some special guests with me. We've never done this before. We've never talked about the situation before at length, but I wanted to bring on my own children tonight to ask them different questions and have them ask me questions live, just to talk about their experiences and how they've actually processed through their journey walking out as survivors of domestic violence as well. So with that, you can ask whatever questions you have. I know a lot of you are interested to hear what they have to say, but there's no question off the board. I've already let them know that they can ask whatever they want to ask, and we're just going to let it flow. And we're looking forward to a great evening of some healing and some questions and answers. So here we go. First, I want to bring up my firstborn. I have twins, and so my firstborn is Alexis. I'm going to bring her to the screen. So Alexis, where are you? Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So Alexis is my firstborn, and she has a twin sister. Her name is Simone. I'm going to bring her on screen now as well. Simone, hey.
Hey.
We're all in different places, so this is going to be a really unique interview tonight. So Alexis is first, then Simone. My next is my only son, my favorite son, Jordan. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, Mom, what's going on?
I'm fine, thank you. And then last but not least, we have the youngest, Sydney. So here she comes as well. Hey, Sid.
Hello.
So first of all, I thank all of you for coming tonight. We don't get an opportunity to show you on the screen. So thank you for participating, and thank you for offering your input and your feedback. So we're going to start with just talking about, you guys already know what I do, right? My one of my purposes is to make sure that I reach back to those who have been through what I've been through, whether it's been different or the same. No experience is without the trauma that goes with it. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about your particular experience, kind of what you remember, and just have at it with regard to conversation about maybe even giving some information to other children who may be dealing with it, and just have open conversation, right? So, Sydney, I'm not sure if one of your mics is on, so you might have to go on mute because we're close by, I think. So maybe it's yours. Let's see. So, okay. She back?
I don't think she is yet.
Yeah.
I know she has a Mac and iPhone.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
There she is.
That sound better?
Yep, it's echoing for some reason, so I'm not sure why. One of your devices has to be on mute if you're on two. So just turn one off. Turn one on mute. Okay. All right. So let's get started. I wanted to, first of all, okay, there it is. I wanted to have a conversation with you all about everything. I want you to just talk talk to me. Looks like now my battery is going out, so I'm going to move myself from the screen for just a second. But I want you guys to just talk about what you remember. Alexis, you can go first if you want to just share what you remember. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to pull myself out for just a moment.
Okay. One thing I remember was one incident when we were kids, and I remember like our parents were arguing or something was happening in the room, and one of us came up with the idea that if we made up a little song that they'd stop, or whatever the argument was, that it would stop. So we all made it up, and I remember we walked in the room and we started up the song, and Dad kind of looked at us and was angry, and then kind of kicked us out the room, and the arguing ensued. And then obviously the incident that happened in the car. Uh, the one thing I do remember is that we didn't see Dad for some time, and Mom said that she had a surprise for us, and that whole weekend we spent the whole thing with Dad, and it was a lot of fun. We ate junk food, had the best weekend ever, and we went to go see a movie. And then it was the end of the weekend, and Mom told us it was time to go, and we all hopped in the car. And I remember it was really interesting when they were talking in front of the car, because when we got in the car, I remember Dad was smoking a cigar, and I thought that was super weird because we'd never seen him smoke before. And then I remember he blew the smoke in Mom's face, which I thought that was really strange as well. And then Mom got in the driver's side, Dad got on the passenger side. And then an argument happened. And then Mom let out this scream that was wild, a scream that obviously we never heard before, and that freaked us all out. And then it got to the point where there was a disruption that caused the manager to come out. And then Dad took off, and then the manager came, and the employees, I'm pretty sure, came out, and we were grabbed out the car, and then the police came, and then the rest of the story that happened after that. That was my take on how I saw it. But obviously, like, it was something that I don't think any one of us ever really thought was going to happen. When you see that happening, you don't think it's going to build up. And I think kids also, when that situation is happening, that they feel like it's their fault, or maybe they even feel like they can stop it. But the great thing, Mom, that you did obviously was to never bash Dad. You never blamed him for that. You never made us resent him for that, which was something that I thank you for that, because a lot of parents can do that, but it taught me, especially moving forward, how to not treat a significant other, to recognize the signs when it's there. And even as kids, we felt like when that situation happened, I don't think all of us really talked about it like this in a sense, but we all knew that that was a changing moment in all of our lives, that can possibly still affect us to this point. But one thing I did learn from that was to always talk about things. You don't have to find a way to argue. You don't have to find a way to instill anger when you're frustrated about something. You can always talk about it. If you need to take a second, you can always walk away, take a few minutes to gather yourself, to collect yourself, and then come back to it. But like I said, that taught me a lot about moving forward, how not to do in relationships. And
Do you guys remember? Do you all remember that the same way?
We have
so,
I
I feel
think
like
we
we
have
have different perspectives
similar.
on. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I think overall we do, but I think we have different angles on how we kind of saw how things went in a
Right.
way. I mean, to I guess overall, yeah, we do. But
I mean,
they're a
but
little
we've
bit different.
never talked about it, so
Right,
I mean, who knows?
right.
What do you remember, Jordan?
I remember it being like a weekend. Well, I guess at the time we were doing weekend visits to my memory. So I think he was still living in uh, like North Carolina or something. So we'd see him on the weekends, and we were at the hotel. We were about to leave. You were coming to pick us up, and we were out. I guess we got outside, and it was like in between getting into the car, there was just like some argument outside. And Alexis, I had forgotten a little bit about that, but I remember the whole of him smoking thing. Like we had never seen it. It was just a difference in the behavior. Like most of the time, I guess even when we were younger, before we moved and even flew out to Atlanta, a lot of things were kind of it was behind the scenes. We were so young, but we had a bunch of family and stuff to kind of entertain us with things or whatever it was. You just kind of have to do what you have to do as a parent to protect your kids from seeing that. But that was the first time we had seen that, and then I remember we got in the car, and I remember I was behind the passenger seat, and it was just a lot of chaos in the car, and then somebody came out, and then I remember we had gone back inside the hotel, and people were questioning us, or questioning, I guess, the girls, and then we just kind of went home, and that was that. After that, at the time it was confusing, but we just had never really talked about it. It just kind of happened. And then I remember we moved like right after that, and then that was that. It was like it was just a new life really for us. But um, yeah,
What do
remember
you
that.
remember, Simone?
I remember there was an argument. And it was outside, and dad and you were arguing outside of the car, and then he was smoking, and then he blew it in your face. And I remember tapping on the window telling him to stop smoking it, and then he dropped it and it was like, okay, you see, like, I don't have it in my hand, like kind of like a leave me alone type of thing. And then you guys got in the car and started arguing in there, and then you just started screaming and was crying and screaming, and he was telling you to shut up, shut up, shut up. And then I opened the car door and started screaming help. And then the minute I screamed help, maybe like 10 seconds later, the front desk agents came out, and I remember turning to look at him, and he just grabbed your stuff, got in the car, and like dipped. And then we got out the car, and yeah, I mean, we were shaken up. It was a crazy night, but I remember that.
What do you remember, Sydney?
Um, I remember little things. I do remember being in the van. I remember him smoking as well. For some reason, I don't really remember a scream. I think, I don't remember how, I was two or
3
three.
years old. You were only 3 years old.
But I remember the hotel. I remember exactly where it is. I know exactly how to get there from here. Um, and I just remember getting out of the car and us going to the hotel lobby, and just I felt like we were sitting there forever, and I didn't know what was going on. And then after that, it's just kind of a blur. We just went on to doing kind of everything we used to do. Um, so
So that's really interesting. When you think about um, when people have different experiences and um, what they remember, because we were all in the same moment at the same time. I mean, this was years ago. So Sydney was 3 years old. That would mean Jordan was 8 and you guys were 9. So that's been a while. But um, what's interesting to me, so what I remember about the day, I remember your dad had you guys, and I went to the hotel to pick you up. and um, you guys were all sitting on the same bed inside the room, which I thought was strange because you didn't really sit together like that. He had tried to rehearse this Mother's Day speech. So he clearly had you guys sitting up all night. You were supposed to remember some speech that he tried to get you to remember for Mother's Day. And you didn't know it. He was upset that, we weren't going out to eat because he had been calling all day to ask me to go out. And I said no. So we got on the elevator. And when we got on the elevator, all of you guys were crouched in the corner together, which also was strange because that's not, I knew something had happened or something was up or whatever. So you could feel the tension. Um, we came downstairs. You guys all got in the car, but Sydney was on the hood of the car. So she was little, so we were still talking. We weren't really arguing, but we were talking, and he was smoking. So you guys were like, "Mommy, you can't smoke," like you learn in school. That's gonna cause cancer. It's not healthy. You guys were saying all that stuff in the car, and you were little, because that's what people tell kids when they're in school. They tell them that they can't, smoking is dangerous or whatever that is. So you guys were already kind of up in arms about it, and he did put it out, put the cigarette out. He said, "Daddy's just stressed out. He's just stressed out. That's why I'm smoking," or whatever. So he and I were talking, and Sydney was on the hood of the car when we were talking, and he kept talking about, he didn't want anybody else to throw Jordan a football and all this crap. So I just said, put the kids in the car. They've got to go to school tomorrow, and you and I can have a conversation on the phone. So we really weren't arguing. I just decided to stop the conversation. It was getting later and later, and he's talking about the same old things and all that to me, because of course I had been away from him for over a year, and I wasn't recognizing that he was escalating. So put Sydney back in the car, and the
Was I
van
in the front seat?
you were in, no, you were behind either me or him, because
I was
I
behind
had to
him.
get to you first.
Yeah, you were
So I
behind.
think you and Jordan were behind, and then the girls were behind that, because I know that you were right accessible in the car seat, and that's probably because you were smaller. But so you and Jordan, actually Jordan was behind the passenger seat,
Yeah.
because Jordan, you actually jumped out the car and opened the door and ran out the car, and I had to call you back to the car because you jumped out, and you came back to the car. Um, but you guys, it was interesting that you guys didn't see the gun, that you don't remember anything about the gun.
Okay, so I was going to say I feel like I remember seeing something underneath the glove compartment or down to where nobody else could see it. But I didn't want to say I did because I can't remember if I did or did not because
Right.
I
So,
was so
so
young.
that's the part that's really interesting. What you saw and what you didn't see. He had a duffel bag when he got inside so I wasn't expecting him to get inside the car. I actually thought when he was coming to the car that he was going to let Sydney in. When I walked around to the driver's side, he opened up the passenger side and he had the duffel bag, and that's when he pulled the gun. So you guys may not have seen the duffel bag part, but I just thought for sure that you would have seen him hold the gun to my head. We had bucket seats in the van, so perhaps that's why you didn't see. But
I
the
mean,
first,
if it was that present, if it was that obvious, I probably did. Maybe at the time I couldn't believe it. So like my mind just kind of blocked
yeah,
that
I'm
part
sure,
out. I'm sure like if it was that visible, I mean,
and
because
that
it
might have
was
been why you
crazy. I mean,
jumped out the car.
I
That
remember I
might have
was
been why.
screaming at one point. Yeah,
Yeah,
and like I must have. I mean, I remember screaming at one point. Like I felt helpless because it was. I remember feeling that. Like,
yeah,
so
and
I
no,
mean,
and no shame, right? I mean, I'm not saying it to blame you for not remembering. I'm just saying it's really interesting, and considering the fact that you guys are kids, you didn't, you don't see it from the same perspective. You're not even paying attention from the same perspective. But I do remember so after the screaming and all of that, finally somebody came out of the hotel where he kept you guys that weekend, and he jumped into the van and took off, right? I don't know if you remember getting out the car, and the first thing Simone did was said, "Don't take my daddy," when they asked me if I wanted to call the police. You probably don't remember that, but
No.
you said that, and so I was thinking, "Oh my God, when the police come, it's going to be my word against theirs, because if she's saying that, that means she's thinking that, which means when the police come, it's going to be a different story." So they brought you guys in a separate room. Do you remember that? They took
Yeah.
you guys in the room, and then they had me in a separate room. When the police officer came out, he said they didn't see anything.
Mm.
And so, of course, it was at that point, it's just my story. And so time went on, and your dad ended up checking into a behavior facility, blah, blah, blah. The police ended up finding him because I kept on it, like trying to make sure that they found him before he found us. And he confessed when the police came to the place where he was. You went to a behavioral psychology uh, facility, and when they got there, the facility was releasing him to be out in society. So basically, you started out, you're like inpatient program, and it kind of graduates to the place where you can go on your own. And he was at that place when the police got there. And when he saw the police, he confessed. So that's how that happened. That's how he was arrested. That's how all of that took place. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't told the truth, or, he confessed as soon as he saw them.
Mm.
So, and we did. We went right on with our regular everyday lives. You guys went to school the next day. I went to work. That might not have been a really good idea. Maybe we should have probably stopped and taken a look at that a different way. Um, I think for me, I had to keep going so that I wouldn't fall apart. I think I was thinking, keep it moving. But in terms of what you guys dealt with, and I don't know what you dealt with, so you can talk about that if you want, but I don't know if you were able to facilitate, you know, any kind of process with regard to what happened, if you talked to each other about it, because we really kind of moved on.
Mm.
What do you think?
Um, we never talked
Um,
about it.
we never really talked about it. I think it was more so we would mention it to each other. Like we would like little instances. We would kind of possibly have like our own kind of conversation, but we never really had a like.
I mean, I don't think we ever really talked about it really ever. I mean, it was kind of just. I mean, we would, if anything, we'd reference like that night or something. But it would never be. I mean, it was all kind of like we all kind of know, so we just didn't, we just didn't talk about it. I kind of wish that maybe we did. I was actually talking to, I was talking to Sydney earlier about that, but um, I mean, you just kind of at the time. I remember I was in the third grade because we were still going to, yeah, we were still going
Elementary
to,
school.
yeah,
Yeah.
we were still going to Mason because we were only there for 2 years, but we're still going to Mason. And I remember we used to have these candlelight luncheons and stuff like that. And I remember I told one of my friends that like my mom was coming, and she was like, "Oh, like what about your dad?" And I was like, "I don't have one." And she was like, "How do you not have one?" And I didn't know how to answer. But I get like from since we didn't talk about it, to me it was just kind of for me it felt like he was there and then he just wasn't.
Yeah.
So it was just like it wasn't, and I'm sure we had our nights afterwards where we were probably crying to you. I remember some nights saying, "Oh, I want this and that." You know what kids do when they get upset, and I'm sure we had a bunch of those nights at home. Um, but I mean, after that, after a couple of years, and we moved, and I mean, you just kind of go with it. I mean, for me, I think I kind of found an outlet in playing football, um, and I was just inspired to play and we had Mr. Perry around and everything. So that was just something to me that was just really cool. It was just a dream of mine. So I just kind of focused on that and just having fun with my friends and everything like that. But things just kind of kept going. So but yeah, I mean, that's how I thought about it. It wasn't like we talked about where he went or anything. It was just, but it wasn't. It was like we all kind of got to a point where it was just our normal. So it wasn't. Um, I would say affecting our daily lives as much, but I think behind the scenes, it definitely affected how I viewed a lot of things like down the road. Um, and I didn't realize it until I think honestly I got to college really. But I think some time went by and it was just part of our normal. So
So what do you think? What do you think was the impact of? What do you think was the well? So what do you think was the impact of going on as if nothing happened? Well, how do you think when you look at it now? What do you think? How do you think it has affected you? In what ways do you think it has affected?
Well, for me in school, I remember whenever after everything happened, I wasn't doing very good in school, and I started kind of failing out of my classes a little bit because it was just something that was kind of on my mind, but it was like an unspoken thing because we never really talked about it, so we didn't get have our chance to really talk and actually heal and stuff like that from it, at least during that time. But I remember I had a lot of resentment because I kind of felt at
For
that time,
me or for him?
well, for both. I really had a lot of resentment because I felt like at the time I was like, my dad's not here because my mom, something happened with him, my mom was at fault, but then my dad's not here because my dad's own choices and his own way of thinking caused this much damage to everybody. And it didn't even have to me, it didn't even have to be like that. But I went through a lot of like, different things growing up, especially like in school and middle school. Like it was hard. And then I would see like girls have like their daddy daughter dances and things like that. And in middle school, you're going through your changes and you want to ask questions, like dating questions for your dad. And it was like we never had that. So it was kind of difficult for me to kind of go through life. I kind of had to figure it out on my own, either by talking to you or like my friends and stuff. But I never really, we never really had that kind of father figure to really guide us through all these different changes in life. It was either we had to ask, you or friends or experiences. So it was hard. I had a lot of resentment.
What about you, Alexis?
Um, I resented dad. Um, I was angry that he let himself get to that point. I thought it was. I think me and Jordan. I can only speak for. Well, I guess I can only speak for myself, but I know when he came back into our lives, which was by that time we were teenagers. I was angry with him. I felt betrayed. I felt hurt. I felt you missed out on so many different things from then the last time you saw us to now we're like 13, 14. You know, I was mad at him. I wasn't mad at you. I was mad at the fact that it took him to that point where he had an opportunity to switch at any point, but he, in those moments that those seconds of doing something are very like dangerous. Um, but when he came back into our lives, I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to talk to him. I didn't know how to trust him. Um, at the time, you were with somebody, so when we saw him, um, I pulled back. I don't know if you remember that. Me and Jordan both kind of pulled back because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know, like, this is the first time I was seeing him for, 6 or so years. Um, so it took me a while to trust him again. And I think he knew that. And but knowing who he is too, he tried to do it in his way that he did it. And at that, like I said, at that point, like my trust for him was broken. So it took him a long time on my end for me to trust him again. Um, but how it impacted me, I guess, I feel that I just kind of put in my head right then and there, like, we didn't go to therapy and we didn't do those talks or anything, but in my head, what instilled in me after that, after the whole situation, I only trusted certain people with that information. I didn't tell the whole world. I didn't want to tell everybody what was going on, or what happened. But in my head, I just, like I said, like when I talked earlier, was how to respond in certain situations, how to um, collect yourself, or at least try to, like, to not argue, to not get upset with your significant other, to actually um, just, I don't know, like, I guess respect, I guess, in a sense. It made me a lot. It made me really cautious when you got out of the relationship and started dating. It made me very protective. I could say for everybody else, probably it was the
All
same
of
thing.
you, all of you.
We were very protective of anybody that came into your life, um, because we didn't know how to trust that, you know.
So,
Uh,
how did you manage, Sydney? How do you think
Um,
it impacted you?
I think I don't think it impacted me until these past couple of years, honestly. Because like I said, I was young, and I feel like us not talking about it, because we all knew. I mean, even afterwards, we all knew it was an elephant in the room what happened, and I feel like I remember somebody telling us that when we turned 18, then we would really kind of talk about it, but we just never did. And I feel like that might be a reason, for me at least, why I kind of deal with a lot of things internally, because a lot of the major things in my life were never really dealt with out in the open, um, with my family. But yeah, I don't think I realized until, like Jordan said, when I got to college, when I started dating, and I didn't really know.
You
I
have
had to
you have
figure
one
out.
one device. You have two devices going. Put one of them on
Oh, I
mute.
think I'm echoing off of somebody's phone. Um, uh, so yeah, when I started dating, I didn't really know what a relationship looked like. Of course, it was never really anything like, I think having a dad every day is just something that we've never experienced. And a lot of people live in single parent homes, but I think they don't really acknowledge how much it can affect how you act, especially as a woman. Just seeing you handle everything on your own, I handle everything on my own, and will run myself dry just because that's just what I've seen as something that's normal from when I was growing up. Just handling everything on your own, and just being in relationships. I've had to learn what it takes to love a man, and what love looks like coming back. Because my first real relationship, you guys probably know, was abusive in itself, just mentally and emotionally. And I didn't realize I was just, you have to be loyal. You're in a relationship. You got to fight for a relationship. But I didn't know that every relationship's not worth fighting for. I didn't know how to say no because I never saw, I never got that on a day to day basis. Like, you know, so yeah, like I said, it didn't really affect me until really like the start of college, when I really started living life. It didn't really affect me when I was younger because I was so young. And, um, but
So, what do you guys think about, even though you haven't had it at this point, to consider therapy at this point? Do you think that it's still, or I'm hoping that you understand that it's still necessary, right? Like, even though you haven't had it, it's probably necessary that you get it. So, first, I'd like to apologize for not, taking you and making sure that you went through therapy. Um, and I think it's because I just didn't. I mean, I don't even have a, I think continuing on and pushing forward and all of those things, I think for me, um, establish some normalcy in the midst of what was going on and not really understanding the impact of the trauma for everybody. So maybe I felt like I could manage my trauma, and you guys, by saying you didn't see anything, maybe you didn't experience the trauma. The trauma that you experienced was me screaming, you know. So I think that I put it in another space and I pushed it forward, I guess, probably for myself and so that you wouldn't bring it up. So I had to deal with it over again. So, with that, I'm saying it's not too late to address whatever you may or may not have buried, because I'm certain that if at some point, if it hasn't already come up, there will be triggers that you have, whether it be the area that we went in, or the, if you remember what you had on, or you know what I mean. There's different things that will come up for you individually that require that you get to those things so that they don't affect, or they don't continue to affect the relationships that you have going forward. So with that, I would recommend that we seek out individually and collectively even therapy to walk through those problems or walk through that trauma that you may have hidden, because they do come up later at some point. Agreed?
I agree.
Mm.
I think
Yeah,
everybody
no,
should. Everybody in their life should go to counseling. I think counseling is therapy is good for anybody, and that was something I was thinking about doing for myself anyway, with regarding to this situation.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to go to therapy, um, personally, but I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's kind of late at this point. Like for me, um, um, I think we've formed. I mean, our characters now. We've grown up in the years that we matured and, um, got our personalities are far behind us now. Um, so I think in regards to this situation, I wish we would have had it earlier, and it did affect us, and we should go to therapy because the five of the six of us all have, deeply rooted, um, I don't want to say issues, but we have our own things that we're dealing with that, um, may have gotten worse because of this situation. But I do think it's necessary to go to therapy, just personally. Um,
Well, so the thing is, and that's the thing, I think there's a misconception that it's too late for therapy. I think that what people need to understand is that it's never too late for therapy. And as long as you are still able to comprehend what healing looks like, therapy can still work. Um, I think that a lot of times it's because you don't want to see the other side of it, or you're not really interested in facing what the actual need for the therapy is. I think that keeps people away from possibility. But when you want a relationship that's healthy, when you want the thoughts in your mind to shift from what feels like isolation, right? So there are things that you think that everybody's like, that is not what's that's not what's happening, or that's not what's going on, or where'd you get that from? That's because there's some things that you have inside your mind that are telling you something that's different than everybody else. And a lot of times it is because we have things in our mind that, or things that have happened to us, that create the space for us to say, I know exactly how this is going to go. I already know how this is going, because that's based on your past trauma. It's not necessarily based on how it's going to go. It's not necessarily based on the fact that what you're thinking and believing is true. So therapy is necessary because those thoughts that you have create issues and situations that don't have to be. And so it's never too late to acknowledge that, there's something that I keep thinking about. There's something that I can't let go of, whatever that is. There is a reason that you have those thoughts, and it's necessary. I think that therapy is necessary. And so you can choose to have it because now you're adults. So you can, you live your own lives and you do your own thing. But just knowing um, how long a traumatic experience can continue to reverberate in your life and continue to repeat itself in additional relationships. Um, and just knowing for myself things that still are triggers for me years later, um, I recognize that therapy is needed. I recognize that there are some traumas that will continue to haunt until I decide to follow through with whatever that is. And so, my recommendation to you, as you are now adults, I can talk to you like adults. My recommendation to you is find a therapist so that you can get rid of the crazy because there are some things that are just, we don't like to use the terms to offend people, but there are things that we think and thoughts that we have that are just straight up crazy. That's just the bottom line. And so, somebody who is neutrally connected to you is the person that can make the difference between what you think and what is actually happening, right? So there are thoughts that you have in your head. There are thoughts that I have in my head about the next person that I meet. There are thoughts that I have in my head about what I think it means when they do this. And that's not always the case. That doesn't mean that I'm not aware, but what it does mean is that because of my past traumas, I have the tendency to get you first, or I have the tendency to check out, or I have the tendency to run, or whatever those things are, fight or flight defense mechanisms that I use to protect myself. And that's not necessarily what has to happen because if in a real world or in a non-traumatic situation, I can look at this thing and say, this is a behavior that that person chose. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to respond in such a way that makes it look like, you know, what I have already dealt with. Right. So you guys have the opportunity now and you recognize that you have had trauma. We just talked about it, whatever form it took for you in your memory bank, because that memory is still there and it was never addressed. Whatever memory you have of that issue, whatever memory you have of that situation, you've experienced it individually. You've experienced it. We were all together. So we experienced it collectively, but individually, you all have residual from that, whatever that is. When you think about, I don't know, like Sydney said, when she drives past the place, she thinks about it, you know. And so it's important to acknowledge that that's still there. And it's also important to acknowledge that in order for you to, because you'll never get rid of it, but in order for you to have a different memory so that you do not repeat or be re traumatized by that same issue, then you need to talk to somebody. And so, if I could say nothing else, is to say that. The good thing is, I know that we've had a million conversations about this incident and different things. So, with that being said, I wanted to ask you if you guys had any questions for me as it related to that, or prior to that, or anything as a result of that. If you guys had any questions that you wanted to ask me that you never asked me about that or whatever. No? Okay, good. So, but if you
Well,
have anything that you wanted to ask me, about what happened, or
Did you
about,
could you tell by how we act now as adults? Do you think our behaviors are come from that situation, or us just not having a father in our lives permanently?
So yes. Um, so I can start with Jordan specifically. I think that there are things that um, a man can teach a son that a woman can't teach. And I feel like at some point, when he gets to the end of himself and his mom, and that happens at different times, right? So that could happen at 13, it could happen at 50, whatever that age is where a boy starts to become a man. There are certain things that a woman can't teach him. There are certain things that he needs to hear with a little more bass than I have to give. I couldn't give that. And as a result of that, I feel like Jordan was affected because he was not consistently poured into with a male role model. Now, he has male role models, but from a consistent basis, Jordan needed it from a consistent basis, which is why football worked out, because on a consistent basis, he was at practice. On a consistent basis, he was being
That's it.
poured into by a man.
But
If his
okay.
athletic ability was not what it was, he may not have had the same consistency. But because he was an athlete, because he excelled in that area, he was able to get the consistent reinforcement from a man to tell him to keep going. Come on, man, you got this, or whatever. I don't know what they say on the field, but whatever they said, he was able to be praised in a consistent way. The problem is that was when he was on the field, right? So the game ends at some point. And the part that he needed, to me, and this is my perspective, the life lessons that he needed from a man to a little boy, or from a man to a young son, teenager, he didn't get that. So because he had people in his life along the way, they were great, but they were basically spot checkers. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have it every single day. Like a person who has somebody in their life every single day that says something to them every single day or on a regular basis, he didn't have that. He had spot checks when he made great accomplishments, right? Graduated, just different little points. But he didn't have it every single day. And to me, and this is all, again, my perspective, I feel like he missed that. So if I was dating, because for him, he needed the individual Jordan attention, it felt like he was only getting it because the person was dating me, not because the person was interested in him. And so I feel like he missed out. Now, the good thing is all four of you have been covered by the blood of the Lamb. So when there was a part that was missing,
The blood.
somebody
The
came
blood.
in to be the ram in the bush. And at whatever given point that I was at my wit's end, there was somebody that picked up the slack, even if it was for the moment. So, no, he didn't get everything that he needed, but at the times that he really needed it, to me, he got it. So that was enough to cover him through to the next time. And so he was able to flourish based on, those principles and the things that we, instilled in him about when he was a little boy. But yes, I do think for Jordan especially, I wanted you to have the consistency of a man. I wanted you to have the consistency of somebody letting you know that you can do it, that you could, giving you life lessons, talking about condoms, talking about sex, even though I did, because I was making sure that you guys knew what was going on. It's not the same, right? It's not the same. I'm your mom. I'm telling you about, when you put your hand, I remember having that conversation and you guys were all, mommy, oh my God, oh my, and I'm telling you, listen, when you put your hand in somebody's pants. You
I
guys
don't.
remember
I
that
didn't know that
conversation?
conversation.
I never had that with
Well,
you.
you know
You
that's
don't
the
remember that
snap.
conversation?
No.
No.
I sat
We had a
there.
couple different ones though, so
You and Jordan probably,
Jordan was
but
like, "That is so gross, mom. Oh my god." I said, you put
No
your
one wants to have
hand,
that.
you
She
go
was
into the movie theater. You don't remember me telling you that story? But anyway,
no, it may have been Jordan.
I'm just saying
it's
the
Jordan.
conversations like that, even though, when I brought it up to Jordan, it was like grossed him out. But I'm saying when a man talks to a man, it's a different kind of signal that you give off. It's a different kind of conversation. And sometimes it's not conversation at all. It's like, man, you know what's up. And you guys understand. I'm like, what's we're standing there going, what's up? So it's that kind of thing. I think that
yeah.
Jordan missed that. And again, I say there were men in my life, in our lives, that were able to fill in the gap, but those were spot checks. Those weren't a consistent everyday thing. And so in terms of Jordan, the answer is yes. I think there was definitely a miss with the girls, with you guys. I feel like um just the aspect of how a man balances the home and doesn't upset the home. I don't think you got a chance to see that. Not when you were living in the house with me. I wanted you to be able to see um how a man can undergird the house and how he can peacefully administer whatever discipline is necessary. I had to be the disciplinarian. I had to be the person that encouraged, and I had to be the person that spanked. And I didn't really like that role, but that's the only role I could take because I couldn't just let you go willy nilly in the street. So I had to do both.
Oh, you
You didn't
sure
like
tore
the
us up with
spank.
that Tommy Hill figure.
Say it again.
I said you
You
sure
didn't like
tore
the
us up with
spank.
that Tommy Hill figure.
Hey, designers matter, but I'm just saying, but I wanted you guys to be able to see how a man, yes, Pam, how a man treats his daughters, how they respond to him. I wanted you to be able to see that. I wanted you to be able to see healthy interaction with me. And even with my dating, it wasn't necessarily what did you get from that? I don't know. Because what did I
I
get?
just feel like
What, from your dating?
the women,
We be
out
on
of
here.
the 3 women, I feel like I am the most sour when it comes to. Um,
You're the most what?
I feel like I'm the most sour. I can't really be affectionate, even when it comes to like us hugging each other and even just the small stuff. I don't. I
I
can. I
mean,
don't.
I
I
can
don't.
relate on that too, though.
Well,
You
I'm
said what?
saying like the girls. But I see Simone and her husband, and Alexis and her girlfriend, and Mommy and the guy she's dating, and I just feel like, well, what am
So
I
this
doing
is
wrong?
okay. So this is what I'm saying though. When you know that what you're doing, saying, or thinking is different, this is the reason why therapy is necessary. Because if you see that, I don't know, when you see it, do you like it or does it make you want to throw up? Like, what do you feel
It just makes me cringe.
when you see other people affectionate?
No, well, doing it, trying to extend myself to do that. I'm not just saying in a romantic way. I'm just in general.
Right. So
Like,
but when you see other people that are affectionate, does that make you feel like that is so
yeah, it makes me
gross?
cringe. If somebody comes up and asks for a hug, it makes me
Not
cringe.
that, not when they're asking you. When you see two other people, not you. If you see two people hugging, does that make you go, that is the grossest thing? How could you hug her? Do you think that?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. So what I'm saying to you, what I would like to submit to you is that that is an issue that needs to be addressed because people who are humans have interaction and it's usually touching each other. It's usually hugging. So it's something that you might want to address as it relates to human interaction. And you're going to be human until you're not. And so that's like a concern that you might want to address. And it's interesting that you have that process or that thought when everyone around you is affectionate. Like, we're the huggingest family I know. We hug and kiss and everything else. I mean, I that's really interesting to me. And so that's what I'm saying. Even though you may think, I don't understand it, blah, blah, blah. When the things that you don't understand that you see happening around you are the things that you need to address when you go to a therapist.
And
Because
it's
that is major. That's major.
and it's crazy how we all grow up in the same house but have four different outlooks
Right.
on life.
Yeah, I don't remember it. I don't remember it being affectionate. I don't know. Me dealing, I've always felt like I've had to deal with stuff differently because even growing up, like I was, I went to a different school than everybody else, and I started high school, well, public high school, my sophomore year was when I started doing public school. So everything was different for me. I feel like I was on like a different, I don't know. I feel like it was just different for me. I've had to deal with things personally because I felt like I couldn't relate to everybody else.
Right.
Um,
And when you think about it, and this is what's interesting about perspective, because you would have had everything different because you're 5 years younger than everybody. So what happened for them 5 years ago completely changed by the time it was an opportunity for you to go. And so it's not because you were necessarily set apart and different, although all of you are set apart and different. It is because of the years that took place in between, the options were different, right? So what was available 5 years prior and where I lived 5 years prior and how much money I had 5 years prior, all of those things were different when it was your turn. The same thing for the girls. Whatever happened for them was different for Jordan because he was a boy. So it was like circumstances changed, not necessarily that you were treated differently or not necessarily that you weren't able to get certain things. Those things changed. By the time it was your turn, the things I was doing when I first had the girls was totally different. By the time you got here, I was a pro. I mean, yeah, I was, I was 3 kids deep. So the things that I thought about for, doing for the twins, I didn't have to worry about for you. That was the first thing. The other part of that was they were old enough to kind of help you along. So I didn't have to be as into, as involved. I had to be involved because you are still little. But what I'm saying is the things that I can show you, like how to tie your shoe, which I had to teach Alexis and Simone. By the time you got here, they knew how to tie shoes. So that was something that they did. They may have helped you. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't that you were treated differently. It was that things were different when you got here because we were already 5 years in. So you had to catch up. So yeah, you had to deal with different things, but you also had to grow up faster. So you had to be smarter to keep up with the kids because you were younger. So you started talking earlier. You started doing things that they didn't do at 5. You might have done it at 1.5 because you saw them and you did what they did. So it's just really interesting. And that's what I'm talking about, perspective, which is why sometimes when you can't talk to each other or you can't talk to the people that you're in relationship with, it's important that you go to and speak to a counselor because that person is able to decipher what's going on just by you sharing that story. They probably, now I know because I was in the family, but they may ask you something like, what's the age difference between you and your siblings? You know why? Because when you said what you said, they would say, well, I would imagine they probably were already going to school. You were still at home. Same thing for, the incident that happened that brought us to this place. You were 3 years old when that happened. So there's some memory that you don't have other than you remembering that you were sitting behind me. That probably was, even if you remember that your car seat was behind mine. Jordan's car seat was behind the passenger. And I remember that specifically because Jordan opened the door and got out the car. Now he doesn't remember that, but he was little. As an adult, I now remember certain things. And just like you, if you were babysitting, there are things that the child doesn't remember. So it's important that when you have these things where you get stuck and you can't really figure out what it is, those are the times when yes, you need to look at going to a therapist. And it doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't mean that you're crazy, but if you're stuck somewhere, you're stuck in that space and you can't figure out, why do I keep doing blah blah blah, whatever that is. Why do I keep, I have to be on the left side or whatever that is. And so those things are important. But I'm thankful that you guys are, even in the midst of the trauma, right? You guys are very well adapted. That doesn't mean that you don't need therapy. I'm just saying. You're very well adapted. You're able to manage different situations. You're able to rightly decipher left from right and right from wrong. And even though you may choose to go in a certain direction, it's not that you don't know better. It's just that you don't do better. But other than that, I feel like you guys are very well aware of the fact that you came through trauma and you understand it, even though we didn't go to get help, initially. We certainly have had conversations about it. We certainly have talked about, you guys never asked me what happened or anything that transpired since then. Or I don't know if you have questions for me. Do you have questions for me?
I do. Was this your first abusive relationship?
No. So I have been in a couple of abusive relationships. The relationship that I had with your dad was not physical, thank God, but I have been in a physically abusive relationship. Yes.
I don't know if I have anything else.
Do you have resentment towards Dad?
I think that is going away as time goes on. So there's a piece that forgives but never forgets. There were a lot of decisions that I had to make that altered what I think altered my life. There were some things that I could have done musically that were sabotaged. So I can go back to those things. What I've had to realize is that my life is exactly the way that God ordained it to be, whether I agree with it or not. And so if it was something that he wanted to allow to happen, he allowed it to happen. And in some aspects, I feel like I went through some things so that I can bring others behind me forward. And for that reason, I'm grateful to God that I went through what I went through. I never thought that what I went through was because of me. I always felt like what I was going through was because it would impact those behind me. And I knew I would survive, if that makes I don't know if that makes sense. But I never thought I would die because of what I was going through. I always believed that I was doing it for a purpose and that God had chosen me for that task. However, there are things that happened like the day when the gun was pulled, that I personally know people in the very same situation that did not make it. And so that made me continue to believe that my life was purposed for me to go through it and make it on the other side. Because I know two specific people that had the same exact thing happen to them. One within a month of me leaving, and they didn't make it. They're not here to this day. And so it's even more important for me to continue to tell the story because there are people who are depending on my story so that they can make it. just like I was depending, and I didn't know, but I was depending on someone else to tell me their story so that I could believe that I would make it.
Do you think you'll ever get the time to forgive him and heal? Have you forgiven him and healed, or are you still kind of working through that?
Um, I think I have forgiven him. Um, I think that the healing takes longer than the forgiveness. Um, I think that uh, there are things that once you've gone through, um, they just stay embedded in your mind, and so you're changed, but you go on. So, for example, um, when I think about trauma from the issue, from the incident, or from the relationship, I think about the fact that I don't like Halloween. Um, I don't know that that'll ever go away. And it's not that I just don't like Halloween. I don't like dark. I don't like scary. So I don't know that those things will ever go away. I can tolerate Halloween with happy costumes, but who likes that? So it's just something that like when you have a dent in your car, the car still works, but the dent is there as evidence to let you know that this is what happened to the car. So there's like in some areas, small dents that I think will always be a part of who I am. I always look for an escape. I don't like to let anybody else drive because if I ever have to leave, I want to be in control of that. You know what I mean? So those are things that I think about in my own mind that I don't know that will ever go away. And people who have had different traumas, they survive in their own mind is something that they're thinking about, but other people don't necessarily know. So those aren't things on the outside. But in terms of forgiving him, I think that I have forgiven them. Forgiven him. I think that, but there are some things that will never go away. Um, Someone's asking you all the question if you have a relationship with your dad now.
We
Mm-hmm.
we do. Uh, we I will say that it's different than mom's relation. As far as like closeness would go.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
We talk to him every day.
but we
He
talk
sends
to him
us
every day.
Yeah, he sends us Bible
sends us
verses every
scriptures
day.
every day.
Every day.
We're
I
just in
I
a
think
process
yeah,
of
I think
building
now I think
building a
now
new relationship now.
yeah, and I think now that we're older, like growing up, I was closer, at least in my opinion, I was the closest girl to him. But now that I'm older, I'm starting to see a lot of the tendencies that you see in him. So it's kind of like it's, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, we all have a great relationship with him. Like Cindy said, we talk to him every day. He sends us Bible verses to kind of let us go throughout the day. But there's sometimes when I now just kind of keep my distance a little bit because I don't want to. I don't know.
I think it's still. I think everybody's relationship is different with him. Um,
Yeah.
Do
like,
you guys feel like? Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
no, no, you can go ahead and say what you were saying.
I was gonna say, do you guys feel like if you're close to him that I would be mad?
No,
No,
No.
no. I mean,
no.
I think
growing
you're
up,
very open to us experiencing that individually.
yeah,
Right.
Um, but you're supportive either way it goes. Like I
Yeah.
don't I don't think it's ever been a moment where you've expressed to us your opinions. I mean, you might express it to your friends but with us it's always been a neutral thing. Well, what do you want to do? Okay, we'll call him. If you want to call him, you want to go hang out with him? Okay, we'll go hang out. If you're ready to come
Mm-hmm.
home, I'll come pick you up.
Did
So
that work? Is that better than if I said I can't? He
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
I
absolutely.
think
Yeah.
I can.
That
Yeah,
yeah.
I think for sure. I'm glad that even growing up, like I mean, I remember. I mean, we can talk about that night and stuff, but like even before then, like it was it was masked so well that I mean, you know, you guys were just trying to protect us and everything. But I know so many other people who, or even now, people who I know who have kids. Who I have a friend who has he's expecting his third, and the relationship is so crazy. But I'm so glad that it wasn't like that to where you tore him down consistently
Right.
because then God forbid something happened and now we're jacked up. You know, I have friends, I know people who are in that situation, you know, and they're messed up. And a lot of it is because of their, you know, how they feel, I guess, towards that. But I mean, a lot of it could have been, you know, it's two sides to every story. So, you know, even if, you know, the one person was awful, you know, I feel like as a parent, that's kind of where you put your kids first in that situation instead of just, you know, because you could have easily projected how you felt towards him and just made that our vision too, and that just been how we roll throughout
Right.
our
Right.
life. But at the end of the day, we got to move on. So I think even us not going to therapy, I think for me it just kind of helped. I think it helped me in ways of being able to like adapt to situations. Like I wasn't like when I came up to school, I came out of state, you know, away from you guys and everything, and it was just I was things would just happen left and right, and I was just kind of able to kind of move with it. Um, but I'd say like my relationship with them, it has its moments, but I know with one of the biggest things I learned was when Mila was when she was about to be born, and it was my relationship with him was just so up and down. Like I had so many confusing emotions because he was always there with that, and but then I still had we there's conversations that we hadn't really had, so I still was working through those emotions while also dealing with the excitement of Mila. It was just a lot to try to balance, So, but I think everybody, individually has their, we have our days and stuff. I have my moments still, I still do. So, um, but it's just a day to day thing. I think just
What
trying to.
was
Hmm?
trying to what?
No, that was it.
It was interesting because one of the things that I wanted to do is to make sure that you developed your own relationship with your dad, and my relationship with him was as a wife. Yours is as a parent. So that relationship is different. And so because I learned that early on, the things that I thought about was no matter what I said about your dad, no matter how I felt about him or any of those things, through your lens, that's your dad.
Right.
So you wouldn't understand or agree with or even maybe comprehend what I was saying from a wife perspective, right? And him not being a good husband had nothing to do with him being a father. And so I wanted to keep those separate. And I recognized that when you became an adult, you would see him like an adult. But as a child, you'll always be his child. So you wouldn't necessarily see it from the same perspective. And so once somebody told me that, and they also told me that me leaving him does not mean that he can't be your dad because he's your dad, right? He's your dad naturally, he's your dad physically. And so it has nothing to do with him being a great husband. It has nothing to do with him being a husband. He will always be your dad. So I say that to say sometimes there are traps when you're married to say, "Oh, my kids won't ever have a father." They'll always have a father. You always will have a father. That doesn't mean I have to be with your father. You know what I mean? So there was a place where I stayed before I left. There were times that I thought about leaving, and I stayed because I thought my kids will never have a father. And somebody had to tell me, your kids will always have a father. He doesn't have to be your husband, but he will always be their father. And that was like freeing for me because in my mind, a husband equals a father, and they both go together, and they always, run side by side like grace and mercy. I'm expecting the husband and the father to be, and that was not the case. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me or something wrong with him. It just means that we're not able to work it out. We try to work it out. Uh, whether both of us yielded at 100%, that part I will never know. But what I will say is that I have no regrets. Absolutely none. I don't think about what it coulda, woulda, shoulda. Not one day did I think about that. And I think because I really asked God to show me when it was time to go. And I really believe that with everything I was, going through a Bible study class about being an excellent wife, there were certain steps that, they were saying, change your tone. There were different things. I really believe that I went through every single piece of being an excellent wife. I went to counseling for myself. I went to counseling for the two of us. I sought the elders. So there were steps that this particular book that we were reading in the Bible study asked us to do every step of the way. And I followed every one of those steps. And so without regret, when I got to the end and for whatever reason, there was an excellent wife class at church. I was in that class. And for whatever reason, the second class, the facilitator came to the class in fatigues. And she said, I don't know who this is for, but somebody in here is in a battle. I hadn't said anything. I hadn't told her anything. She said, so what we're going to do is we're not going to read from chapter 2 tonight. We're going straight to the last chapter. And in the last chapter, it talked about the battle. It talked about every step that needed to be followed with regard to deciding that you weren't, like you're taking the excellent wife class, but let's just say everything that is asking you to do is not working. And, it doesn't mean that you're an excellent wife. So basically this last chapter, and she said God led her to that chapter, but for whatever reason, that last chapter talked about every step of the way. And for whatever reason, at that time, I didn't know I was in a battle, but I took that last chapter. I went through every single step intentionally to make sure that I was doing everything that I needed to do according to, the scripture, according to this particular chapter in the book, the very last chapter in the book. And when I got to the end of the last step and I had followed every single thing, and it's regular things that you follow, right? But in terms of me following the steps, I followed every single solitary step. And when I got to the end, it said, when you have reached the end of all of these steps, you leave him to the laws of the land. What that means is now the courts take over. Now the laws of the land, meaning whatever that means, police. In my mind, that's what that meant. And I followed everything. And so when I got to the end of that chapter, I knew it was time. But I had literally watched things happen, tried to decide to stay. I left, tried to leave for a few days. I was trying to reconcile. We split up for a little bit, all of that. And it was just too much for me from an emotional state, from a mental state. It was too much. And I had to leave. But I did not want to leave until I was clear, because what I did not want to do was return. If I decided to leave, I said, I'm never returning. I don't want to think about it. I don't want you talking me back into it. I don't want to eat crow. I don't want to apologize in front of the group. I want it to be done. And so I stayed until I knew that God said, okay. And when I decided to leave, I called Poppy, pastor, and he said, baby, you have done everything you could do. And I was prepared anyway to leave, but
I decided to leave California.
No, I decided that I was going to leave him. So initially I wasn't going to leave California. I was going to just leave and not be with him. But it was too hard to stay in California because I knew everybody. And he didn't know where I was when we first left. right? So we were not at home. Do you guys remember that? We weren't
Mhm.
at home. So
We
when
were
we
in
first
Malibu at
left,
one point.
the first time that we left, well, it was the second time for me, but the first time for you when we left, we went underground for 30 days and we stayed in hotels. You don't remember that?
I remember Malibu. That was Malibu, right? We stayed in Malibu for a little
No,
bit.
we were in South County. We weren't in Malibu.
Oh, okay.
But we left, but we were gone for 30 days. You guys probably don't remember that. And
I
I
so
remember
do.
staying at the
I
I
remember.
remember that.
hotels
you do?
Hmm.
Yeah,
and
we were
staying, going to
school,
like a
different
school or
school
something,
stuff.
like
They would
a
Right.
deliver us. They
Went
would
to a
deliver us
different
food to the
school.
Yeah,
hotel.
I had to
hotel.
change all of that. Sydney
yeah.
was a baby. She doesn't remember because she wasn't, and that's what I'm saying. So the things that occurred for Sydney came at 3 years old. But when I first left, we went underground for 30 days. We stayed in a hotel,
Mhm.
right? So by that point though, I was ready. Once I left that time, I was ready. So the problem was staying in California because everybody knew who we were, all that kind of stuff, and I just didn't feel like it was going to be neutral enough for us to get a new start. So that's why we moved out of California. I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay, but I definitely wanted to move to get the heat off, trying to stay with people who said, I told you and you needed to, all that. It was,
That was the last
How'd
thing
you
you
choose
needed.
Atlanta?
because I chose 3 states and I felt like we had the most support in Georgia,
What were the other two states?
Virginia, and Maryland.
Ooh.
Dodge the
Yeah,
bullet.
but you was in Atlanta.
We dodged the bullet.
Yeah.
No
We
shade.
would have been in
No
So,
shade.
Maryland.
No shade.
oh, I'm just saying. So we had to get out of there. My plan was really to go for a year and just, you know, woosah, if you will,
And then
and
come back.
then return. But, things developed. We had changes, we had schools, we had support. It worked. And so we made the right move at the right time. Even though you guys wanted to go back to LA, as soon as you could, it didn't happen. But now you're grown, you can make your own decisions. In the meantime,
I'm
do
out
some
here.
therapy.
I'm out
So
here.
let me just
I'm out
say,
here holding it down. I'm holding it down for all of us.
so let me ask you, because we're going to wrap up. Thank you all of you who are paying attention and listening. If you made comments and we didn't see it, it's because you're on my personal page and not Another Woman's Stories page. So if you want to say something in the next few minutes, you're welcome to go to Another Woman's Story on Facebook and make your comments there because I can't see the other ones at this point. But and Jordan dropped off. I guess he lost connection. He'll be back. Do you have any advice for, here he comes. Do you have any advice for um, young people who are dealing with the situation? Do you have any advice or anything you want to say to offer hope to anyone who's dealing with it, who they should talk to, that kind of thing? Do you guys have anything you want to share?
Do you want to go like on a
Just whenever you feel ready to share.
know that it's not your fault. Know that don't feel like this situation that is happening is on you. Um this is beyond you. Know somebody you can trust um with how you're feeling, and trust people that won't blame you or won't make you feel like it's your fault or make you feel like that you're like just like you're daydreaming or it's not happening or whatever. Know that your voice is valid, um and know that you have people that love you and care about you. So even if you are going through that situation, you can talk to anybody that, like I said, you ultimately trust and know that they're going to have your best interest at heart. But I want to say that I appreciate you, Mom, for getting us out of that situation and um, not putting the blame on what happened, and letting us have our own opinions on things and letting us have our own voices and letting us voice our opinions to you, and you not you know I don't know, just like making negative remarks about things. So I appreciate you for doing that, and obviously for you leaving that situation. So I love you.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Simone?
I just want to say, allow yourself to heal. Like mom says, talk to somebody, especially like if it's something that you're internally dealing with and you don't have anybody to rely on. And know that, you're not alone. There's a lot of people who's going through the same thing that you're going through. And also to communicate how you feel. And even if you don't feel like talking to anybody, get a diary, write in your diary, or like mom says, go to therapy, or go to your pastor, go to whomever that you really trust and talk about the situation. And don't hold on to resentment. Allow yourself to heal. And mom, I also want to say thank you, because I know that decision was crazy hard. And it was a difficult decision to make, but because you know we have been blessed with being protected, with loving people in our lives and our family and our friends, you were able to make that decision and make it for the better. So I appreciate you very much, and you did a good job with raising great 4 kids.
Ooh,
Doing what they
child.
gotta do, with Sydney being the last one to graduate, but you did it, and we're so proud of you. And keep it up, and you know, keep
Oh,
going and keep pushing.
thanks. Thank you. JJ?
Yeah, okay.
JJ.
Just to backpack kind of on what Simone said. It's different for me now because I have Mila. So just as a parent, which is still is crazy to say, um, but to have to move across I can't imagine, how hard that was. I mean, I'm gone from Mila for more than a few hours, and I'm, in a panic. But I don't. That's something I can't ever imagine doing. So I've always looked up to you and stuff growing up, and I always knew that you sacrificed a lot, and that it's inspiring for me, especially now that Mila's young. I might feel tired or whatever, but I know that you were tired when you did a lot of what you did, and you sacrificed, a lot. And I would never. Um, I mean, I don't know how we can ever repay you for that. So you raised us really well, and um, I love you.
Love you too.
Um,
My favorite son.
um,
Always knows what to say. My favorite son. He just Sydney.
but yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, I was no, I was just gonna say for any young kids going through something where they're in single parent households, just know that your parents that they do care for you, and you'll just understand things a lot better when you get older, because things were really confusing for us, growing up. Even if you don't really get closure on conversations, I mean, you kind of the older you get, you'll kind of realize the reasons why your parents kind of did what they did. So yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, Sydney?
Um, some advice I could give to another kid would probably be to confide in your siblings. Um, I know it might not always be easy or feel like you can talk to your parents about stuff that they're going through. But I know it was a blessing for me to have the three of my siblings to talk to. Even if you don't have siblings, friends, um, uncles, aunts, talk to somebody about it. It's necessary that it comes out, that you release all that energy. Um, and again, I do appreciate you allowing us to have this conversation. I think it was really necessary that we had it. Um, and yeah, I'm proud of you. You did a great job. We all love you so much. So
Oh, well, I
we
love you
support
guys too. But
everything you do, regardless of how protective we are. We just want to see um, you be loved the way that you deserve to be loved. So that's just where it's coming from. Um, so yeah.
thank you, all four of you. And this is what I want you to know. Like, we only have what we have to share with the people that we love, right? So if your past or your experiences have been tainted, damaged, it's hard to give at 100%. So, that being said, consider the fact that your dad suffered from a lot of trauma as a child, as a, as a grown up. Um, I suffered from traumas as a child. Maybe I don't know. I mean, but what I'm saying is, you are a product of your experiences, right? So if you find that people express themselves in a maladaptive way, it's because they've experienced something that has caused them to be that way. And that's the reason why therapy is necessary. And that's the reason why it's never too late. Because as long as you recognize that there's a problem, you can fix it. When someone else gives you information, more than one person, right? Not somebody trying to manipulate, but if you get the same thing from a lot of people, it's not because they're making that up. So the things that you can't see in yourself, there are habits that you have maybe that can be addressed. And so when you don't address those traumas and those issues, you pass them on. You share them with the next person, or you share them even in your own mind. And so if I could say anything, it would be to re-impress upon you the need for therapy, and also to understand that as a parent, you do the best that you can with what you have. And what that means is, as much as I would have liked to blame another person, I have to look at myself. There's some things that I brought to the table that could have been done differently. Um, there are also things that I could have recognized had I not been in the mindset that I had already, based on the trauma that I have already experienced, to recognize some things about your dad that maybe would have been like, that's not a good idea. The blessing is the four of you. But I'm saying to you, when you have trauma and it's unaddressed, a lot of times you repeat that same pattern with somebody new. And so at the best case scenario, you will identify it and move to a different place. Worst case scenario, you would at least be able to identify it. And it may take you a while before you stop repeating it, but at least you can identify it. Right. So that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to my show tonight. I appreciate you sharing. I know that it took a lot maybe for you to share. I'm thankful that we've talked about it enough where you're comfortable being honest, and you're comfortable, with the whole world seeing you say what you said. So I didn't give your addresses or anything, but I just want to let you know that people are watching and they have seen what you said. And so my expectation is that you go and continue to do what you've been called to do, that you continue to follow what God has led you to do. But I really want you to get on the other side of healing. If there's some things that you need to address, that you definitely go and seek the counseling that you need. So that being said, I'm going to pull you out of the room for just a moment, and I'm going to close out, and I'll be right back. Okay. So one by one, say goodbye.
Bye.
All right. Bye, Alexis. I'm going to put you out of the room in order. Bye, Simone.
Bye.
I'm last.
Bye, Jordan. Goodbye, Sydney.
Bye.
All right. Thank you guys so much for staying. Thank you for listening to the podcast tonight. I hope that you were able to get some level of perspective. Just know that if you're in a situation that your children do get the residual from that, right? They still receive some level of residual from whatever you've experienced, depending on how the partnership ends, depending on how the communication is between the partners after it ends. There's a lot that needs to be absorbed from the help of a therapist. And so in my particular case, we didn't go to have therapy. We probably should have. And again, like most people, I went ahead and kept going. I thank God that my children were covered in more ways than one. And that's not necessarily something that happens all the time, right? So Thank God for the exception. But I would like to encourage you all, if you need help, um, if you have a situation that you need to talk to somebody, even if you don't know where to go, you can start with the domestic violence hotline. Their number is 1-800-799-SAFE. Certainly, if you want to visit our website, our address is www.anotherwomanstory.com. We have our Instagram page, which is another woman's story, our Facebook page, and we really do want your feedback, right? So if you have a story that you want to share, if you have things that you can do to help us out as an organization, we welcome all input. If you want to send an email, our email address is anotherwomanstory@gmail.com. Again, my name is Cheryl Patton Dandridge. I'm the founder of Another Woman's Story, and I hope that you do whatever it takes to make you safe. Do whatever it takes to get you the healing that you need. And anything that we can do to help, we're willing to do that. So, with that being said, have a wonderful evening. I love you all. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.